Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Javihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Fragacharya Astutar Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Fragacharya Astutar Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today I'll be reading from Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, text 22. Yehi samsparshaja boga doka yanona evate adyan tavante konteya natesho ramate buddha. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. An intelligent person does not take in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. Purport. Material sense pleasures are due to the contact of the material senses, which are all temporary because the body itself is temporary. A liberated soul is not interested in anything which is temporary. Knowing well the joys of transcendental pleasures, how can a liberated soul agree to enjoy false pleasure? In the Padma Purana, it is said, Ramenti yogeno nanti satyanandi chat admanihi iti rama padeshenau param brahma vidyate. The mystics derive unlimited transcendental pleasures from the Absolute Truth, and therefore the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is also known as Rama. In the Srimad Bhagavatam also, 5th canto, 5th chapter, text 1, it is said, Nayam deho deha bhajam nirloke kashtam kaman arhate vid bhujam ye tapudivyam putra ka yena satvam shudyat yasmad brahma saukyam tu anantam. My dear sons, there is no reason to labor very hard for sense pleasure. While in this human form of life, such pleasures are available to the stool eaters, hogs. Rather, you should undergo penances in this life by which your existence will be purified. And as a result, you will be able to enjoy unlimited transcendental bliss. Therefore, those who are true yogis or learned transcendentalists are not attracted by sense pleasures, which are the causes of continuous material existence. The more one is addicted to material pleasures, the more he is entrapped by material miseries. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Nanamostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamami Hare Pre Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's an old saying, when one is youth, he wastes his health to get wealth. And when one is old, he wastes his wealth to get health. So what does this mean? It means that when a child, he aspires for material things, and he thinks this is happiness to him. But an old man, he may have gone through so many experiences, but he's trying to get his wealth back, or his health actually. So true wealth is health. And this reminds me of a story. There was a little boy. He would see his father on the phone all the time. The father would be on business calls. He was too busy for the son. So the son approached his father and said, "My dear father, how much do you get paid an hour?" So the father said, "Why do you care?" So he kind of just shooed him away. And the little boy kept insisting, nugging on his shirt, said, "Father, how much do you get paid an hour?" So the father finally told him the amount. A few days later, the son comes back again and says, "I have something to give you, father." So the father looks at the child, and the father says, "What is it?" And the little boy gives him the X amount of money that he gets paid an hour. So the father says, "What is this?" The son, he said, "I would like to buy 1 hour of your time. I want you to spend time with me." So the man, he realized there's so many things that is going on in his life. I'm too busy for my family, I'm too busy for my health. And at the when he's in old age, he realizes he wasted so much time. And Srila Prabhupada, he uses this word dharma. I think everyone here knows. But in the English translation, it translates dharma as some type of religion. And when you look up religion, it's a type of faith. But dharma it's not like faith, because faith can change. So a Christian can change his faith to become a Muslim, and then a Muslim can change his faith to a Hindu. But Srila Prabhupada, he describes that dharma means occupational duty. It's the essence of something. You can't change it. And so he uses this example that the dharma of a snake is to bite, and it's venomous. And the dharma of a scorpion is to sting. And the dharma of a lion is to eat flesh. But, so similarly, we have to ask ourselves, what is the dharma of the living entity? So that depends. And Srila Prabhupada, he explains that when one is in the bodily conception of life, his dharma is sense gratification, enjoyment. And when one is in the mental platform, his dharma becomes speculation, imagination. And one is rightly situated in his original occupational position, his dharma is to serve Krishna. So these are the three different levels of dharma. And I was telling this young man today on book distribution in Balboa Park, I asked him, do you believe in the soul? And he said, I don't think I do. So I asked him, why not? He said, we can't prove it. So I told him, I pointed at his hand, and I said, what part of your body is that? He said, that's my hand. So I pointed at his mind, and I told him, what is that? He said, my mind. So I told him, if you listen to these two words, my hand. So the word my, it implies ownership. The object and the owner is different. Like, this is my desk, my table. So I told him, who is that I that's thinking my? And he started thinking about it. So I told him the soul is the owner of the body. It's completely different from the body. So these different concepts of life that people have, they chase happiness according to that, the realization. If you go outside the temple, people are chasing after sense pleasure. And Rishabhadev in the purport says, don't strive for these material senses, these sense pleasures, because they're easily available to even hogs and dogs that eat stool. So Rishabhadev, he's telling his sons, perform tapodivyam, divine austerities. I was distributing books today again in Balboa Park, and I like to ask questions for them to come to the table. And one of the questions that I ask them is, what motivates you to get up in the morning? And you'll be surprised what they say. I do this for my children, I do this for my family, I do this to help others. And rarely they say, I do it just to earn money. And if they do, they're bluffing. Maybe they do it. But ultimately, they want to help either their child, their wife, their husband. So the nature of the soul is to serve. We have to serve someone. And one of my favorite, the most famous quote in the Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayashyami Masuchaha. And Srila Prabhupada, he was in a room full of his devotees. And one of his devotees asked him, Srila Prabhupada, we've committed so much sinful activities, life after life after life. How can we counteract these activities? And Srila Prabhupada, he was very firm. He said, have you not read Bhagavad Gita? So he quoted this, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Give up all forms of religion, all speculation concocted. Actually, Srila Prabhupada, he would say, you rascal, give up your idea and say, just surrender to Krishna. And so Krishna, he says, Masuchaha, do not worry. And then Srila Prabhupada explains that when you surrender to Krishna, it only takes 1 minute to fully surrender to Krishna. And so all of the world religions, this is what they're based off of. Surrendering to God, and then hopefully they'll be able to take away your sins, and you'll be able to go to heaven. Like a lot of Christians, they have firm faith in Jesus, that they can save them. And they understand that we're full of sins. We were born sinners. And that's also there in the Vedic, or in our philosophy. But we take one step higher. We actually make an effort to purify ourselves. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he established the 4 regulative principles. We don't drink, we don't do intoxication, we don't eat meat, we don't gamble, and we don't have illicit relationships. And try to live a pure life. And so, these 3 aspects, the bodily conception, the mental platform, or the original platform, they're compared to karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. And bhakti yoga is considered the supreme, or the most topmost. And the other ones are just ladders leading up to bhakti yoga. And when I distribute books, I ask them 2 questions. Who are you, and what is the goal of life? You could see there's a puzzle. They look very confused, like, wow, no one has ever asked me that. So then I tell them, there was today, he was a mathematician. It was a perfect candidate. So I asked him, if you are solving an equation, and if that first step is wrong, will your conclusion come out correct? He said no. So I asked him why. He said because the foundation was wrong. So I asked him, who are you? And he was embarrassed. He said, I don't know who I am. So I told him there's a book called The Science of Self-Realization that tells you who you are, your spiritual identity. And so I told him when your foundation is correct, everything that you do in life is correct. Unlike if you start off thinking you're the body, that's the wrong conception. So then your happiness turns into sense pleasure. And Srila Prabhupada, he would always say that it's like a camel chewing a thorn. It's chewing thorns, but the blood is mixed in with the thorns. And he thinks he's enjoying, but is actually hurting himself. So similarly, these sense pleasures that a lot of people are searching after, the same source of happiness becomes the same source of misery. Especially when it's taken away, either by time or by force. Therefore, as devotees, we should learn detachment. The easier life becomes when we are detached to a lot of worldly things. When I first read Rishabhadev's instructions to his sons, and he mentioned this, that the sense pleasures available to stool eaters, I was thinking about how true is that. And Lord Ramachandra in the Ramayana, he says, just like happiness comes on its own accord without us asking for it, distress also comes. So it's part of destiny or fate, according to our karma. We either enjoy or suffer according to our past misdeeds. So a wise man, like in the purport, I was saying that they don't take delight in these sense pleasures because it has a beginning and an end. I was distributing books and I met a couple. One was a financial advisor and the other one was a life insurance. I think I mentioned this before. So I asked the financial advisor, I said, I need your advice. He said, what's that? I asked him, if you made billions of dollars and you put that in your bank account, how much would you be able to bring with you in the next life? And I smiled. And that's when he realized we can't bring one single penny with us. So what are we so proud of? And I turned to the lady and I asked her, you sell life insurance? She said, yeah. And I told her, is tomorrow guaranteed? And she looked at me and she said no. So I told her not even a moment, the next moment is guaranteed. And then Srila Prabhupada, he would quote this, Padam padam yad vipadam natesham. That in this material world, every step there's danger. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mityu sarva haraschaham. I am all devouring death. I take everything away. So for the atheistic people, they don't know what death is. And Krishna comes in the form of death to take everything away. Your house, your wealth, your position, your relationships. He takes all of that away from you. But if you understand who Krishna is, then you have nothing to fear. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that Avajananti mamuda manushim tanum ashritam, that fools deride him when he comes in this human form. People think Krishna is an ordinary person, but he's not. And then the next verse, Param Bhavam Ajananto Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the Supreme Lord of all that is. He has a transcendental nature, Sachitananda Vigraha. His form is not like ours. If you look at this Rukmini Devi, she was arguing, or she was having a conversation with Krishna in Dwarka. And so Krishna wanted to enjoy some rasa with her, meaning, a wife and a husband, sometimes they argue. So Krishna, Lord Krishna, he wanted to experience this. So he told Rukmini Devi, why did you marry me? You could have married the other princes, And then he was joking with her, but Rukmini Devi, she took it very seriously. So she started describing these other kings, princes, their bodies are made out of matter. And she says they're a bag, it's a bag full of mucus, bile, urine, feces, and then she adds, decorated with the mustache. So that's what it is. This is what this body is. And so many people are so proud of this body. They go to the gym, they put so much time and effort decorating their faces. In the West, there's a saying where ladies, when they wear too much makeup, they call them cake face. When you see their face, it doesn't look natural. And therefore, there's so many billion-dollar industries, Botox, plastic surgery, to try to keep this body as youthful as they can. But like I mentioned, tomorrow is not guaranteed. And then Krishna says, what is success? Krishna says, Manmana Bhavan Mad Bhakto. Madhyaji Mam Namaskuro. So all you have to do are these four things. Always think of Krishna, become Krishna's devotee, worship him, and offer your homage unto him. And then, Mam Evashyasi Satyamte. You will come to Krishna. And it's described that when we reach Krishna's abode, life there is eternal. There's no old age, there's no death, there's no disease. We are able to enjoy with Krishna. And this is the opposite of this world here. We don't live very long. We're full of ignorance, and these bodies are temporary. And when the sages were discussing in the Bhagavatam, they say, Prayenal payusaha sabya kalau asmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagyahi ubhadrataha. That in this iron age of Kali, men almost have but short lives. Do we really have 100 years to live? Not only that, but there's a preoccupation that one goes through during life. When one is in childhood, they have a preoccupation of playing. They'll jump off of beds, hurt themselves, so many foolish things. But that's their nature, is to play. And when they're in youth, they're working. That's their preoccupation. And when they're in old age, their preoccupation is to worry. Worry, worry, worry. And so, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described that a person may live for 100 years at most, but he spends half of that time sleeping. So you actually have 50 years. But from the first 10 years, it's plain. From the 10 to 20 years, that's spent in romance, working. And the third to 50 years, it's spent working. So then we actually only have 10 years to practice spiritual life. But we don't have, tomorrow is not a guaranteed. And so Srila Prabhupada, he would always emphasize that please take this Krishna consciousness very seriously. We want to go back home, back to Godhead. This is not our home. And anyone that tells you you can be comfortable here, they're not your friend. They're lying to you. Because this material world is temporary. So just like you were saying, we don't take delight in temporary material pleasure. Just like people that are addicted to drugs, these drugs, it may cause some type of stimulation, some kind of happiness. And then sooner or later you start chasing, it's called chasing the dragon. You start chasing after that high. Chasing it. And then eventually your mind, it becomes so dull, so numb that you need to take twice the amount, 10 times the amount. And then eventually you're out on the streets and you're searching after this high, and it's unnatural. But the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This sound vibration is what makes the soul happy. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say, stay high forever. That's what we're searching after, for happiness, real happiness. If you observe a child, he looks at the time. He wants the time to go faster. He wants to grow up. But for an old man, when he looks at the time, he goes by so fast. See, there's two different spectrums. The child wants to grow up, but the old man, he wants to slow down time. So, similarly, this human form of life is very rare. After evolving through 8,400,000 types of species, we're awarded this human birth. And Prahlad Maharaj, in the 7th canto, he describes this human body as a perfectly constructed boat to cross the ocean of this repeated birth and death. And there's two things: favorable winds, is Krishna's words, the Shastras, and we have a nice captain, the spiritual master. So they can take us over this vast ocean. And Krishna, he says, Daivihi Ishagunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya, that this material world, consisting of the three modes, they're very difficult to overcome. We can't do it on our own. It's like you may be a good swimmer, but can you swim from one continent to the other? You can't. Your arms are eventually going to get tired. And it's described that if you put faith in another person that has a material body, it's like holding the tail of a dog. You can't rely on it. So we use this human form of life to try to go back home, back to Krishna. I was distributing books today, and one of my favorite new lines I ask is, how would you like to make a difference in the world? And they smile and say, I would like that. So I present the books to them. They get a book, and this happened to me a few days ago. I tell them, if you know someone that's going through difficulties in life, stress, anxiety, worries, regret, shame, guilt, doubt, jealousy, envy, hatred, there's so many things that the mind can think of. And in worst case scenario, depression and suicide. So there was this Mataji, she said, I was that person, I was that friend. So I gave her the book, and she was very emotional. So when we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, we're giving them hope, we're giving them inspiration, we're giving them a chance to understand the goal of life. Yeah. That's why I love book distribution. We can actually change the way a person feels about life. When a person has given up, when he feels that there's no solution to the problems in life, when he meets a devotee, that can change them. But we're giving Srila Prabhupada's association. And another thing, there's a lot of people that you meet on book distribution. I was at the harbor, and Srila Prabhupada says, Prahlad Maharaj, his only fault was he was a devotee. And then his father, Hiranyakashipu, became his enemy. And the only fault was that Prahlad Maharaj, he was a devotee. And so I was distributing books at the harbor, and there was this homeless man. He was not very clean. He was eating food with birds, and he said something to me. He said, "Get a real job." This homeless man is telling me to get a real job, So I started laughing, and I waved at him because he was in the right state of mind, and he was in an unfortunate situation. And I was also at the same spot, and I was distributing this book to this young couple, and I asked them, what causes the mind to work against you? Depression, suicide, loneliness. And then they said a lot of different answers, but I told them it's because we're misusing our intelligence. We're chasing after material happiness, actually. And I asked them, what do you pay for happiness? What is the price tag for your happiness? A cup of coffee, expensive dinner at a restaurant, a fancy car. So they're equating happiness with some type of price tag. Happiness, real happiness, comes from within, and it's a state of mind. In the Bhagavad Gita, I love sharing this verse actually. I ask them, who's your best friend and your worst enemy? And they say, oh, my wife or my husband. And I smile and I tell them, what about your worst enemy? And I say, oh, my neighbor, or, and I tell them, what if it's the same person? They look at each other. And then so I asked them, please read this verse. And then so the verse says, for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So our friend, our enemy is the mind. And the difficulty with that is that we live with the mind every day. Seeing millionaires, sports stars, celebrities, they may have wealth, followers, and fame, but we hear about it. They're jumping off of balconies, committing suicide and overdosing. They have everything that the common man is striving for, but they're not happy. And why is that? Because they're on the bodily conception of life. They think they're this body. And they think the purpose of this body is to enjoy. That's true, but we're not the body. We're the spirit soul within the body. And so many people, there's a vacuum in the heart, and they're trying to fill it with all these material assets, material opulence. But ultimately, it doesn't bring them any satisfaction, real satisfaction. So when we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, we're giving them the highest treasure. Raja Vidya Raja Guyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyak Shavagamam Dharmyam Susukham Kartumavyayam. That this Bhagavad Gita is the king of education. It is the most secret of all secrets. I tell people, hey, you want to know a secret? Say, yeah, I love a secret. So then I make them read that verse. And then it is the purest knowledge because it gives direct perception of the self by realization. It is joyfully performed and everlasting. So Krishna consciousness is the solution to the problems of life. We should take it very seriously. I was at the harbor again, and I asked people, what do you do for work? Just to kind of relate with them. And this man was walking by fast. He said, I'm a butcher. I said, come here, let me talk to you. And he said, yeah. And I said, have you heard of karma? He said, yeah. And I said, what do you think about it? He said, I think it's real. So I showed him the picture of the man killing the cow, and then the faces swapped. And so, wow. I told him, give up that butcher job. I told him it's going to cause you so much pain, not only in this life, but in your future life. So he found the concept of karma very interesting. And so he took a Bhagavad Gita, he gave a donation, and he was on his way. So when we speak with people, I tell people that we have about 2 minutes to get their attention. Because in the Kali Yuga, our attention span is so short. There's so much nonsense that are going through our mind. And so within those 2 minutes, we should say something that they can take with them when they go home. They start thinking about it. Hey, what was he talking about? Karma, killing others and coming. So yeah, book distribution is a nice way to preach Krishna consciousness. And this today, it was a nice, I had a conversation. It was an old man. He had a hard time hearing. And so we were talking, and I didn't think he heard me. And I asked him, would you like this book? And he said, no, thank you. So I said, okay, please have a nice day. He walked away. 10 seconds later, he came back and he said, I can't help but to believe that our conversation was meaningful. So he gave $10 and he took a Bhagavad Gita. So this is the type of impression that we should have when we go on a book distribution. And I met this other couple today. They were nice. But I can tell they were struggling for existence, meaning they're trying to chase after this material happiness. And so I gave him the set of books, and I was having a conversation with them. What is actual happiness? What is the goal of life? What is the purpose of existence? These deep topics. And they took a set, they gave a donation, and I gave them a garland, a flower garland, real flowers. And the lady was so moved that she started breaking down in tears. She said, thank you so much. And the man, he said something nice. He said, you made my weekend. And I told him, thank you for your time. And so when we distribute books, it's not about how much books we're distributing, how much Lakshmi, but the connection that we have with people. Because that first impression, it lasts a long time. Yeah. How long are we going for? Okay, thank you. And then so this purport is very important because it tells us that real happiness comes from the spiritual platform when we're connected with Krishna. But when we're disconnected, we have no value. And Srila Prabhupada uses the example of a screw on a machine. This screw, it has function and it has value when it's connected to the machine. But when the screw falls out, nobody cares for it. It's just a loose screw on the street. So similarly, when we're disconnected from Krishna, what are we doing? We're just loitering here and there. We don't have actual value. But when a kind, merciful Vaishnava, devotee of Krishna, he connects us back to Krishna, then we have purpose in life. And our purpose is to connect all the other lost screws out there. There's billions of them. So we have our work cut out. This idea of sense pleasure has a beginning and an end. You can see that everywhere. And it either has a saturation point or it stops. I'll give you an example. Just like ice cream, tapas. What's your favorite? Of course, we don't eat ice cream. What's your favorite flavor? Vanilla. You may have 1 scoop of vanilla. Very nice. A second scoop. Ooh, 3rd scoop. After the 5th scoop, you're like, okay, I'm done with this. So it has a saturation point. And when you go to another store, they may not have vanilla. Then you get frustrated. See, so this sense pleasure is like that. It has a beginning and an end. It's either it ends temporarily or it has a saturation point. We get tired of it. So, and we should chase after Krishna. Krishna is our best friend. He's our best well-wisher. We are part of Krishna. Therefore, our dharma, our duty, is to serve Krishna. And when we serve Krishna with devotion and love, it makes us happy, the soul happy. Just like watering the root of a tree. When you water the root, everything else is nourished. The branches, the flowers, the leaves, the twigs. So when we nourish Krishna, everything else automatically becomes happy. The mind, the senses, the body. So that's real happiness. Okay? Does anyone have any questions or comments, reflections? Okay. Let me ask you guys a question. Oh, one more story. I was at the harbor and I was talking to this couple and they didn't want to take a book. So this other person, he was jogging. He came to my table and he said, "How much for the sets?" And I told him, "We're accepting donations, whatever you can give." And he said, "What do people usually pay?" And I told him $20 for the set of 8 books. And I said, "Okay, can you give me a discount?" You know, I said, "Okay." And I asked him, "How many sets do you want?" And then he said 5. So I said, "Okay, I'll do $80 for these 5 sets." So okay. He gave me a card. I swiped it. It went through. He was piling it up, 5 sets. And then he said, "Haribo, give these to people that don't have money." And he walked away. He was a devotee. See? I didn't expect that, you know. He donated or he sponsored 5 sets just for me to distribute to people. And sometimes you meet people, they don't have money, they forgot their license or their card, they forgot their Lakshmi in the car. But you can tell they really want these books. So this nice devotee, Krishna sent him to get these books sponsored and then to distribute them. And within 10 minutes, I distributed these 5 sets. And the people that got the sets, they were very grateful, you know. So yeah. Okay. Tapas, is there any question? No? Okay. So my question is, it's more like a riddle. Before getting in your car and driving, what is the first thing that you need?
Gas.
Okay, gas.
Road sign.
A what?
Traffic signs.
You need GPS. Okay. Jesse, you have any answer? Guess? Energy. Okay. All of these are good, but you're missing one essential. Before you even getting your key. I love asking this on book distribution. And they say, "What is Matsuji? Do you have a seatbelt?" All of these are very important, but the real answer is you need a destination. You need to know where you're going even before you get in your car, right? So I tell people on book distribution, this life is like a journey. Do we know where we're going? Do you know how we're getting there? Do you know why we're going there? So I want to end with that. We should know what the purpose of life is. We should know why we're doing things. It's not just sentiment. It's not just out of blind faith, but we understand Bhagavad Gita, we understand the scriptures, and we understand who Krishna is. Okay. Hare Krishna. I think we're gonna...
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time and attention. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Last session